Elias Theodorou, welcome back, man.
Yeah, pleasure to be back.
For everyone that doesn't know, Elias Theodorou will be fighting Brian Baker at Colorado Combat Club 10 this Saturday in the main event. How you feeling, and how's fight camp, and how's your weight cut going at the moment?
Feeling good. Ain't nothing to it but to do it at this point. Weigh-ins are tomorrow. Really excited. Obviously, like you mentioned, I'm fighting Brian Baker, a tough veteran like myself. But in general, also looking to make history as the first sanctioned cannabis athlete when I validate my therapeutic use exemption here in Colorado. And it's a long road, and I'm very it's almost like cathartic at this point because it's been like 5, 6 years of a process, and now I'm going to do it. So I'm really excited to win both inside the cage and out this Saturday.
That's awesome. Good to hear. I'm glad to have you back on, and like I said, and it's a pleasure always having you on, and I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're cutting weight. I gotta ask, like, how much weight do you cut on the normal daily basis?
Well, it's a process. I walked around about 215 pounds, give or take, for this camp. So cutting, give or take 30 pounds. I woke up today 198.5. After a little bit of movement and some sauna or whatever like that, I'm like 195. Like I could, like what I woke up this morning, I could have cut the weight. The difference is this weigh-ins is going to be later. It's not like like the UFC and some of the other commissions that I've done where it's like from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. And then they'll have like a later, for show weigh-ins where they'll have like a face-off and stuff like that. This one, it's all at 6 p.m. So everything kind of got moved over, but I'm well on track. This will be my 23rd professional fight, 23rd or 24th, yeah, professional fight, and this will be the 23rd, 24th time that I've made weight. I'm a professional. I'm going to do it whether I want to or not. Like I said, there ain't nothing to it but to do it. So the process that we're going to be doing today, or tomorrow rather, when I wake up, is I basically have a sauna suit that's going to go up to like here, and I just sit and watch TV shows, and then basically sweat out the last 10 pounds. After this interview, I'm going to have my last meal, if you will, and then my last little bit of water. And then throughout the day, I'll probably wake up around like 195, 194, maybe 193. And it's like 8 pounds of water weight, which is pretty much nothing over the course of, a whole day of trying to cut weight.
You talked a lot about this fight, fighting like or you talked a lot about the weight cut in for this fight and like where you normally walk around at. So do you normally walk around at that weight? Is every fight different? Do you try to come in heavier in certain fights?
About 210, 215 is my weight, just what I walk around in. And I plan to be about like 205, 210 by the time I step in the cage the next day. It's just my body knows the deal. It's a process. It's part of weight cutting, and that's me. I'm 185, so I think I'll be the bigger opponent when I go in there, just because of the process that I kind of take it, and there's no way I could get down to 170. There's very much, if anything, I could even fight at 205, but my frame is just not big enough, right? Like I'm kind of like 185 is like the Goldilocks. 170, the weight cut wouldn't be bearable. But 205, the guys hit a little bit harder. And my frame is just all like, I'm 6'1". If I was maybe like 6'2", 6'3", a little bit taller, a little bit more of a reach or whatever like that, then maybe I would consider 205. But no, I'm a 185er. And that's an interesting aspect. Again, my opponent, he's gone down to 181. He's been at 185. Obviously, this fight will be at 185. And he's also fought at the 170 mark. So it'd be interesting to see how relatively, how relative our size difference is. He reminds me of a couple of opponents that I fought in the past. It's kind of a mixture of like an Eric Anders and a Dan Kelly. I mean, bigger up top, smaller legs, and looking to try and knock my block off, and has really good judo.
Yeah, I do want to talk about the fight itself, but last we spoke around in January, or excuse me, not January, July. I think a couple months prior you had a fight, and since then, I mean, you haven't fought, but now you're here. Did you kind of expect this long to have a fight, or were you hoping to get in sooner? What happened there?
Basically 2, 3 times a year is about right. So I would have fought twice this year, and I'm happy with it because, again, navigating the circuit, the regional circuit, like I have, in the capacity of with a purpose rather of getting my cannabis validations approved. So the more important thing was fighting in BC. So the time that it took to fight in BC, that was one thing. Then looking to fight in Colorado. So finding the right partner for that. So good. It's not you, it's me. What's it called? What I was gonna say was no, I'm really happy that kind of all worked out with Colorado Combat Club, who I'm partnering for this. I'm both a fighter and the promoter. Shoring up a lot of the sponsors. And that's a long process to kind of get it all together. And I kind of worked together with the camp that I did in Vegas to prepare for this. And also the other things that I have on the go. I've been playing poker over the last little bit and not sucking, which is pretty awesome. And I was able to actually compete in a couple of events in the World Series of Poker. So that was a fun experience in Vegas. Being able to train there. I trained at Extreme Couture. I trained at a syndicate as well with a lot of UFC fighters, up and comers and everything in between, and other vets obviously as well. So I had a great aspect of training partners to kind of get through this camp, and just one of the important things with being in Vegas is kind of was the halfway point of the elevation. Obviously, Colorado is a little bit elevated with the mountains and whatnot, so I was kind of getting ready in Vegas at half the elevation. Stayed in Denver for about 10 days before, 10, 12 days before. And then Greeley is actually a little bit lower than Denver. So I'm back down to 400, or 4,000 elevation, but don't really feel it. If anything, I just more or less feel, a little bit of the, for lack of a better word, drain of the weight cut. It's just a process. We just came from the grocery store while because we came into Greenlee right now. So we went to the grocery store for all the post-fight, what's called rehydration and stuff like that. And, just the drain of having to put away all the carbs that I can't eat right now. So that's basically the extent of my suffering at the moment.
In talking about all these things that you have going on, I only can imagine you being in the main event, you have media obligations. Is there any additional buzz going around with you being the first, marijuana exempt athlete? Like, do you get more of the buzz in that aspect versus the fight, or is there a little bit of a mix of both?
It's a little bit of both. Obviously the fight scene, it's a fight, and we're two veterans with a big enough name to sell at the arena, and couldn't be more excited. Even they had the promotion actually had to add what's it called, seating. They opened up even more of the arena, so we were planning around 1,500 to 2,000 people, and we're actually looking more towards a full house of 4,000. So really excited to bring that that hype and that excitement locally, but also again in the this will reverberate once I win, get my hand raised in dominating fashion in the fight scene. And then obviously, like you mentioned, in the medical and recreational cannabis space, this is making a lot of waves actually, and that's where a lot of the headlines that I've been able to make and will make once I make history and get my hand raised.
You talked a little bit at the beginning of this interview about Brian Baker, so obviously you know a little bit about him. But when you first got the notice to have this fight with him, did you know much about him at the beginning?
I think so. In the capacity, I've seen him fight in Bellator a
Mm-hmm.
few years back, and then once I was able to look at some footage and whatnot, saw the similarities of two different people. Because again, like I mentioned, this is my 23rd, give or take, professional fight. So I have a lot of experience to kind of draw back on. So that's what I kind of do. When I'm sizing up an opponent, and I kind of mix him with a Dan Kelly with the judo, and Eric Anders, who's a tough guy that goes forward, tries to knock your block off and stuff like that. But just like the many times I've done, and with both of them winning, I'm going to show him the difference between chess and checkers.
Hmm. And also with Brian and your opponent, like he's only had one fight since 2013. But I mean, he's fought some really good fighters. He's had a lot of tough opponents, even in Bellator. Like, are we expecting fireworks in this fight? I mean, you're obviously not overlooking your opponent.
No, I'm not overlooking my opponent. And, a little caveat with him. The reason why he hadn't fought in so long is because he actually got over cancer. So he has a new
Yeah.
lust of life. I think in many ways, he's happy to be here and excited to do what he loved. I think his fighting career in some ways got cut short because of cancer. And obviously, he was able to win it. I beat it, I think, twice now at this point. So I think in many ways, he has something, there's two different aspects, like kind of psychologically speaking, that he kind of has that I don't. One, he has a family and he's trying to get paid just before Christmas. So there's that added incentive. And two, he has a loss of life in the capacity of, his life in some ways was, in jeopardy. So having, that kind of, that win already, like he's already won. It's kind of similar to where I kind of find myself with the cannabis aspect, where I've already won. I got the approval. I'm allowed to medicate as prescribed by my doctor leading up to this fight. And again, I'm knocking out a barrier in front of knocking out prohibition in Colorado, and look to kind of spread that throughout all of the U.S. and more broadly speaking, the world in athletics. And going back with Baker, I think he's a tough dude. His last fight, it was a DQ, but I from what I kind of seen and what I've saw, he was dominating the fight, and his opponent, Mike Rhodes, kind of turned away and he got elbows to the back of the head. So he was in a dominant position and he was able to capitalize. Unfortunately, he did so in the wrong way. So even in his return more recently, he looked for the finish, and that's going to make both of us. But I've worked too hard to basically come to this point, and I'm not going to let anyone take away my plans to get my hand raised twice inside the cage and out.
Yeah, and I mean, like, how do you see this fight playing out? How do you see it from start to finish? Obviously, I don't want you to give away your game plan by any means.
Well, there's going to be a little bit of a feeling out component because, again, I want to see how he, returns to the cage. He does press forward. Some of the criticism that people could have about his style is he's almost too forward and he's walked into punches. And his chin is a little bit of suspect because he's been knocked out a couple of times. But I'm not necessarily the biggest knockout artist. I'm more of a, death by 1,000 cuts and trying to, exhaust you both mentally and physically. And that's what I plan on doing, whether it's against the cage, whether it's the ground, whether, it's at distance or in the close range. I look to, impose my will from the beginning and end and look for that finish in the later, the second and third round.
Yeah, and going forward with this, I mean, you're gonna be fighting in Colorado here. So do you plan on fighting more in the States or in Canada? What would you like to do?
Well, in many ways, I'm very much focused on this fight, but
Mhm.
moving forward, I'll be able to, continue that same energy in regards to knocking down barriers. And there's different states that I'm already applying, more broadly speaking, to remove the restrictions of cannabis, and other ways outside of the sport of mixed martial arts. I look to help, and that also includes, kind of tying my roots here in Colorado with Colorado Combat Club, and looking to help other athletes moving forward get their own therapeutic use exemption so they don't have to worry about their own medical and recreational use.
And this is another main event for you. I mean, like, you win this fight, what would be the ideal situation for you? What would you like to see next in a perfect situation?
Finish the fight, and obviously start the new year with that same momentum. Once I win this fight, I'll be 3-0 since the UFC, and looking to talk to some of the larger organizations. I had the chance to do that before, but I was very much dedicated and committed to fighting the stigma of medical cannabis in athletics, and that's what I did earlier this year. Obviously, sat out a little bit during COVID, but we kind of all did. Um, and I was able to work and train and work on the fundamentals, and the proof is kind of in the pudding. So, at this point, very much looking to, finish 2021 with a statement, and then take it from there.
And I know you're focused on this fight, like you mentioned, but you have any plans to celebrate after this fight?
Well, there's probably an after party, and then a lot of food. Obviously, Christmas and the holidays are coming up. So I'll be rebounding to that 215, 220 mark pretty quickly. But I'm going to keep it in check. Basically, after the holidays, get right back into it and look to compete again another 2, 3 more times this following year.
Excellent. Well, I'm not going to take much more of your time, Elias. I appreciate you taking your time to come on here and your weight cutting. So good luck with your fight on Saturday, and we'll talk again soon.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you again for having me. Have a
No
pleasure.
problem.